Hey guys, what is up? I'm following a format similar to the one I had before, I think just a couple of videos ago, where I'm just showcasing a few invasions and fights that have been interesting. This guy right here, his name is Yes Indeed, which is kind of funny, but I see he's got a dagger in the Llewellyn, so I know what he's going to be all about, so I'm obviously going to be really careful as I approach him. I have to throw in some attacks here and there, though, obviously, and he sees how passive I'm being, so he starts spamming his dagger at me, and seems like he might be a 50-50 player, but I read the Estus bait and punish it appropriately, and it's really amazing to me how often people try for that particular Estus bait. The key again is just timing your run up so that from their perspective it looks like the timing couldn't be better to use the Estus parry. So here I get an opportunity to do some ganking as a blue, and unfortunately it spawns me right by the Corvians, and especially with the health buffs that all the enemies get with multiple phantoms, I don't want to try to fight them, so I checked briefly to make sure that they weren't going to follow me. See, this guy's got the parrying dagger, which is kind of, I give him some style points, but he's being a little predictable with it. And so you'd think at this point, I've backstabbed his parry attempt pretty convincingly that he would give it up, but he doesn't. He goes for it a number of times. So here I stop, I pull up because I wasn't sure if the Grave Wardens were dead, and of course they aren't. And these guys can be dangerous anyway, but with an invader around and with their buffed health pool, I need to definitely be careful. And he's here being smart, but he goes for the charge dart too because he's appropriately wary of me trying to parry a running attack. But the problem is that attack's so slow. That's one of the reasons I don't like using charge dart 2s to avoid parries. I mostly prefer to just mix up the timing on my R1s. And that's something that Scott Yund used to say, damn no HTML. And I used to think he was wrong about that, but over the years I've realized the wisdom of what he was saying. You know, it's funny, I used to feel guilty in these situations. I used to feel badly about ganking the invaders, but eventually I realized that's just how the mechanic works. That's the whole point of blues, and you'll see a couple mistakes I make here where I don't do a good job of avoiding his Murakumo R1s. But, you know, that's what blues are supposed to do, and, you know, that's really the role that I've chosen if I choose to get summoned as a blue, and I think I'd actually be cheating the host in some sense were I not to gank with him. So I was definitely looking for that. Not looking for that. It's so crazy to watch Stunlock hell happening from you know, like a host and Phantom's perspective. So obviously the host there screws up my setup parry, but I can't be too angry with him because he saves my life right here. I get my guard busted, but the firebomb is probably the only thing that kept me alive. Host merrily charging in among the PvE. Finally, the invader's starting to do more running R1s, which I think he should have definitely been doing all along. And here I see him going for an Estus. I know exactly what he's thinking, and so I'm going to go in and punish that Estus. At this point, unfortunately for the invader, he's pretty well fucked. When you've got somebody chasing you down that has an idea of what they're doing, and you've been Undead Hunter charmed, there's really not much you can do. And I don't know if he meant to throw that firebomb or what he was thinking there. Sorry, man. Still feel badly about it. So this is kind of an example of something that comes up all the time where I get summoned, I fight a host, and then I get resummoned almost immediately for that same host. And I kind of feel bad because this is about how most of the fights tend to go against solo hosts. Essentially, I kick the shit out of them, and then like a minute or two, they come back. And Schwa was asking about this, and this happens all the time where people get Undead Hunter charmed. I think they're just not used to it. Nobody's ever done it, so they're not familiar with the mechanic. But again, I get summoned again, same player about a minute later, and almost exactly the same result. In fact, it's gotten to the point where if I get summoned into the same solo host world more than like 3 times in quick succession, I start going progressively easier on them, so eventually they can win. Like, I want them to feel progress. Because what's interesting about this as a boss fight is, normally you fight a boss, you keep fighting, you fight, and you get better, and you learn the boss's patterns, but I'm learning your patterns too. So we're both kind of improving, and that can get hosts stuck in an awful stalemate. So this is me here getting invaded while I was waiting for Spear of the Church fights. And man, that hand axe covers up so well for the weaknesses of the spear. This invader is nearly dead, and he obviously he's having a good time, but he's not going to heal up. So I just stop and heal to let him know, like, hey, heal up, just because I'm having fun with the fight, and I don't want him to just die so quickly. Here he tries something kind of sneaky. He knows I have a proclivity for roll catching, so he goes to the shield to try to parry me, but the hand axe is way too fast. And there he makes the mistake of not realizing that I like to kick at shields. Again, it's just such a powerful technique. I definitely recommend you do that. Give it a shot. So here's a very similar situation. I'm hanging out outside waiting for a Spear of the Church fight. It's actually kind of funny. I get invaded about once every couple hours if I just stand out here and really don't do anything. Dragon Slayer Axe, obviously not the threat at soul level 90 that it is at like soul level 15. That weapon is really a poor matchup though for my weapon setup, and he realizes with the spear he's got to keep his shield out. Now watch this. This is what the hand axe is capable of doing. So I run up to force a roll. And this is on reaction, by the way. That is not a predictive roll. I am reacting to his roll. Now here, the second roll catch is predictive. But what that means is I can roll up and I don't have to commit to any activity. I can run up and then wait to see what you do. If you swing, I can roll. If you roll, then I still have time to catch you on reaction. And that is just an absolutely terrifying setup. So this last clip here, actually, this is from gameplay that's probably a couple months old at this point. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with this, but it was definitely interesting, and you'll see some of the things I do as a fish here I've improved on in the time since. Like, I would have approached this fight quite a bit differently now, but that's a good sign. It just tells me that I'm learning a lot and I'm getting better. So I'm not trying to tow it with these guys too much at this point. I'm trying to assess, like, what PvE is still around, how many enemies are there other invaders in the world. Even at soul level 22 with these big weapons, death can come quickly. It's not as nasty obviously as like soul level 90 or the meta level, but even here at 22 it can be a problem. And both these phantoms are over leveled password summon phantoms, so this is a crappy setup. And this host, I don't remember his name exactly. It's like Slippy Fist or something like that. And he's a regular here in the swamp, and he likes to gank. If you like fishing, or if you want to try to get better at fishing, this is the place to be. And I read that rolling attack, and actually something that Praise the Sun said, I think, God, like a year and a half ago, he made the observation, and I thought it was really observant, that if you hit a player, players after you hit them, they want to hit you back. And if they go into a roll like immediately after you hit them, there's a high probability that they're going to do a rolling attack immediately afterward. It was funny too, because rewatching this clip 2 months after I recorded it, I was really surprised by that parry. I thought, how in the hell did I read that? I'm pretty sure that was where the read came from. These ripostes are doing like laughable damage. And this was, I think, right around the time too that maybe I'd started being more aggressive, swapping to, I forget what I'm using for my riposte. I don't know if it's a dagger. I mean, like 295 is just not going to get the job done. I mean, these Phantoms each probably have 1600 HP-ish. So I think it was Doomsday that originally suggested to me that I use the deep infusion on the longsword. I used to use it raw. It's at +2, and I think his kind of advice was a deep infusion is going to perform better than raw, but what will perform best of all is raw with bundles. But I'm so bad about using bundles, and I've made some valiant attempts to start using them more often, but I just know how I am, and I'm unlikely to use them on a regular, consistent basis. So I've just kind of elected to use the deep infusion. I played around with swapping between them, like using the deep and then trying, if I thought of using bundles, of swapping over. And there's actually another change here that you'll notice in my gameplay. You may notice here that I'm using some of the Seek Brows, and I don't really use those anymore. I don't think they're cheating, but I also think it's a bit of a gray area, and I'm indebted to some friends of mine for some discussions around that topic. I don't think anyone's wrong for using them or it's bad, but I've just decided for me, I probably don't want to use them anymore. I will on an occasion use a Blessing, just because you get those in the normal course of gameplay, and you get, I think, almost 10 of them now in a playthrough if you go through both DLCs. So there's nothing wrong with using them. It's just when you save scum them and you've got hundreds of them, I think it's a little unfair. Like, this whole interaction here, I would have played so completely differently now. Another change that I've made is I've kind of gotten away from the simple infusion on my shields. At low levels, it doesn't matter so much. Like, the foregone stability ends up being like, I don't know, 3 stability units, especially like +2. But especially as you get to higher levels, the stability hit is really huge. And there's a few exceptions, like low-level dark builds I may keep it around on, but otherwise I just stay away from it. And this is so aggravating, man. That guy just spams 4 times in a row with that Irithyll straight sword and erases like half my health. An observation I made about somebody, I think it was actually on one of Skitter's videos, is how ganking is itself a skill that you can develop. These guys are pretty good at covering up for each other's mistakes. They're good about, not getting caught off in one-on-ones because they know at some level they're not good enough. And one of the problems with playing Unlocked, you can see right here, is that occasionally you'll give away a cheap backstab to somebody who maybe didn't even intend to stab you in the back and they just got lucky. And that was a really crappy pivot attempt on my part. So fortunately the cavalry is here. So I stabbed this guy in the back to give some relief to the purple, and now I see the watchdogs coming in. And here for a moment I kind of try to pile on this guy, but then I realize I don't see the host, and I'm worried that he's off resummoning. And actually I don't know what happened to the other Sunbro. But in a straight up one-on-one, most of these guys are totally screwed, as you can see. Well, that's it, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you guys enjoy the content. Take care now.